Yes.
What are your day-to-day responsibilities as Trooper Tracy, as people know you?
I am the state police social media coordinator, and what that means is I actually run the social media platforms on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, etc. for the department. And on a day-to-day basis, I monitor just to see kind of where people are at, what the national news is, something that might be a hot topic that we wanted to talk about. And then I also I'm able to provide educational material, whether I do that in a funny post, a serious post. I share other posts from news outlets or other police departments, and just to get that message out. And our goal at the end of the day is to not only educate these people about our laws, but also to put a human aspect to us as men and women that serve for the state.
To a certain extent, your message has been guided in 2019, and it's been dictated, I guess, to a certain extent as well.
Yes, absolutely. So unfortunately, we have lost 3 troopers in this the first 3 months of the year, and I tried to mold our messaging to Scott's Law, to the Move Over Law, to educate about that. 2 of our troopers that were lost were a direct result of people failing to move over or slow down. And the alarming information that I'm getting in these comments and the reposts and the retweets and all these shares is a lot of people are still unaware what that law is. And it's hard for me to even fathom that because it's been a law for so long here in Illinois, but it's also a law in pretty much every other state. And so it's hard for me to understand why people don't know that. They're teaching it in schools, they teach it in driver's ed, and it's been all over the news lately, yet there's still people that say that they didn't understand that it's a law, or they didn't think it was that important. And so I'm able to mold my messaging based on, sadly, on these incidents that have happened, but I also think it's a great opportunity to educate the public.
So when you engage with people through social media, where do you think the disconnect comes, particularly as it relates to Scott's Law?
That's a great question. So I feel like a lot of people think that we're only motivated by quotas or only motivated by generating revenue. And there's so much misinformation about why we do what we do. And our motivation is traffic safety and to keep our roads safe and to see these number of fatals every year. And now these fatals are including 2 of our troopers. The misinformation that the public has about that information is, where I can take that and then push that the correct information out and hopefully teach them. So hopefully that answered your question. Rambled on that one.
What do you think the biggest misconception is about Scott's Law or the Move Over Law?
That they don't think it's that important. I think that's the biggest thing. People just don't think it's that important, or they didn't think it applies to particular vehicles. They thought, well, maybe it'll apply to a police officer, or maybe it'll apply to a fire truck or an ambulance, but I don't think they understand that it applies to all vehicles on the side of the roadway with their emergency lights activated. So what that messaging that I can use for them, I'll say, hey, what if it was your grandma that's ran out of gas on the side of the interstate? Or what if you have a flat tire and you can't move your car? What if you've struck a deer and your car is immobile? So now it includes all of these people that are my listeners, my followers, my public, and it includes them. And so now it makes it personal for them. But a lot of people still sadly think that it doesn't apply to them, or they don't think it's a big deal. And that's a common excuse that we hear once we pull these people over, is they didn't think it was a big deal. And to hear that, it really hurts. It hurts our heart that they don't think it's a big deal, because it is. It is a big deal.
So where do you think the disconnect happened? Because we mentioned that's being taught in schools, it's being taught in driver's training. Obviously the messaging is out there, it's in the news, but we've seen these crashes increase, particularly in the first quarter of this year, and we've seen obviously your colleagues.
I think a lot of the disconnect is that people are becoming a little bit more selfish behind the wheel. They're distracted. They're doing multitask things while they're behind the wheel, and it's not maybe that they don't think that the actual violation is a serious one. I think they do think it's a serious one a lot of times, but they have become so wrapped up in that phone, or their children in their vehicle, or eating, behind the wheel, or talking to their passengers, that they get distracted. And at the end of the day, a lot of these people are distracted. They're looking down, and then they look up, and it's too late. It's too late. it happens in the blink of an eye. And so that disconnect where they might know it's a law, they've heard about it, but they don't think it's going to affect them. And then that crash happens, and they were the person that couldn't move over, or they couldn't slow down in time. So,
do you feel like ISP, the state lawmakers, everybody collectively is doing enough?
We're trying to do as much as we can. I think there's always room for more to grow, but we're doing the best we can. We do a lot of enforcement on it. We do a lot of education on it, legislation. However, at the end of the day, people need to take their own responsibilities for their actions behind the wheel. And even if we can educate one additional person that didn't know about it beforehand, that's a win. A lot of police departments across the state have now taken that initiative now that we've got this momentum going, and they are doing their own enforcement. So it doesn't have to do just with the state police, but county police departments and city police departments are doing their own initiative, as well as they're partnering with tow companies, they're partnering with fire departments, and going out there and doing strategic efforts just to make sure that this message is pushed out there. Some of them are issuing warnings, some are issuing citations. That's up to each individual agency, but as a whole, I think our department, we can never do enough. I think we're using these stories of our tragic losses and hopefully changing people's minds and making them understand why it's so important of a law.
I mentioned to you before we started rolling that I went out with a local tow truck driver, and we sat on the side of the road for about 20 minutes, and there were about 90 cars, trucks, semis, and a couple school buses, some of which didn't have an opportunity to move over because there was somebody driving next to them. But in about 20 minutes, there were obviously dozens of vehicles that went by and didn't move over.
That's fascinating to me. It's fascinating. And I don't know if you remember my expression. I just looked at you like I couldn't even believe that was real. There's so many people out here that they're experiencing it for the first time. They sit out there, they have a flat tire. I've seen a lot of chatter on social media, if you will, of motorists that have been broke down. They've put they turn their camera on and they record that rear view mirror. And I think people in general are amazed how many people are disobeying this law, and it doesn't really affect you until you're out there. And so for you to sit in there in the tow truck and see that many violations, that's amazing to me, that so many people, after all this effort, after all this enforcement and all of this education about it, and they still fail to move over. And whether they can say, I didn't see the lights on the tow truck, or I didn't see, it's common sense. It's common sense to give that person some room and to move over. And for us to continue to say there's no more excuses for this, it's really sad. And it makes me sad that many people violated the law. But like you said, there's a lot of question on social media where people say, what are we supposed to do if we can't move over? What are we supposed to do if there's a semi to our left, or there's a semi next to us and we can't? I understand that people have a lot of questions, and that's where we can use that engagement with people and educate them that if you can't move over, which is what ideally we would like you to do, we would like you to slow down. And so that's common sense, that's best judgment, and you just have to treat everybody that we're stranded on the side of the road as a family member of yours, and then maybe you'll do the right thing.
One of the issues or suggestions that was brought up by Taylor Feldkamp was changing the color of the lights on the tow trucks, because he said in several other states they're allowed to use blue lights. He said that drivers don't respect the amber or white lights that are on tow trucks.
That's very interesting. So I actually did a little social media study, if you will. I put a post out just asking people, what is it about the lighting that you're not seeing? Because the crashes that we've had for our department, and 2 of them resulted in death, but multiple others resulted in severe injuries or minor injuries. But is it the lighting? Is it the time of day? Is it too bright? Is it not too bright? Is it the color of the lights? Which one do you see first? Amber, blue, and red and white are 4 different colors. However, I've noticed that a lot of people say, well, I see the blue more often, or they say, I think yellow is more attention grabbing, which to the people that say that yellow is more attention grabbing, well, that doesn't make any sense for the people that are saying that I didn't see the tow truck. but they think that the Illinois State Police needs to put more yellow lighting on their light. Does that mean it's very strange to hear the responses of people? And at the end of the day, you're either looking at the lights or you're not. And the lighting, whether it's daytime or nighttime, whether it's too bright, whether it's LED, I can see why tow companies want to put additional lighting on there, whether it's just more lighting or oscillating, LED lights. But for them to add, a different color, I don't even know if that would change. People aren't moving over for squad cars that have the blue and reds, so why would they move over for, I don't know if that makes sense. Just adding lighting might not be the answer. I think that's a tough question. I'm not sure I even answered that one correctly.
I don't know that there's a right answer.
Okay.
From your position as a state trooper, would you object to a blue light on an IDOT or tow truck?
I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea, but I think there definitely needs to be more information on that. I can't obviously be the decision maker on that, but for me personally, I'm always reading the road ahead. I'm always watching for those lights, and so me to see a blue light on a tow truck isn't going to change my behavior, but it might to a motorist, a civilian. So that's a great question. I don't know if I would be one way or the other. I just hope that people would watch for the lights. Just watch for the cars and watch for the lights, because on any given day on a roadway up ahead, you can see pretty far away. So that's a great question.